Peace and blessings, and welcome to Catholic Crossroads, a Black Catholic's journey, where we discuss topics from a Black Catholic's perspective pertaining to social and spiritual issues that is happening locally, nationally, and globally. My name is Gardis Watts.
And I'm Tina Carter.
And we're part of the Chicago Black Catholics Alliance, an organization that looks to collaborate with other Black Catholics in the Chicago and the Chicagoland area. As you see, we are in a new setting here.
Yes.
In our parish that me and Tina attends, Our Lady of Africa. And it's nice to have Father Carl invite us to do the podcast in this church. And I think that's something we probably might want to think about in 2026, probably changing the venue. We typically do it at the old St. Elizabeth's. It's now the Tolton Center. But right now, it's nice to be under the tree and have a nice little setting here.
Not only under the tree, but at the foot of the cross and what is our spiritual home here. And Father Carl Gales graciously allowed us to film our podcast here today. So thank you, Father Carl.
Yes. So this month, we are going to do our 2025 year-end review. We're going to talk about issues that was main topics in 2025, and also kind of talk about what we're going to expect in 2026. So a few things that we can probably touch upon, church-related issues, obviously the death of Pope Francis earlier this year, the beloved Pope Francis, who basically took the church back to its social justice issues, more pastoral Pope Francis, and also to refocus our attention back to the poor and the marginalized.
Yep.
And when we talk about Pope Francis's work as the Pope, we look at him through that particular lens and how he is readjusting the focus of our church towards, those who are in the poor and the marginalized category. Also, too, with the death of Pope Francis, what emerges is the new Pope, Pope Leo, who is a Chicagoan.
Yep.
The first American Pope in history, and kind of a surprise to me because I would never thought I would see an American Pope, considering the what America is to the rest of the world right now, which is trash. But I think this was a good choice of Pope, because while Pope Leo is an American Pope, he doesn't have the ugly American ways that most of us have, where we think that we're better than the rest of the world. So we'll probably start with there, the death of Pope Francis and the emergence of Pope Leo.
And one thing that I will say about Pope Francis during his time as pontiff is that he was a prolific writer, and he really brought us back to in my opinion, the basis of what our church is supposed to be, as founded by Jesus Christ. He brought us back to that sense that we are a church for the people. And what that means is that we have to be there in the trenches with the people. From immigration to food insecurity, to just being where people are at. And we see that not only in his writings, but how he preached and how he lived his life as Pope. One of the things that comes to my mind is Laudato Si, on care of the earth. And he reminds us with that encyclical that we are part of this earth. It's more than just a stewardship. The earth is us and we are of it. And if we don't take care of the earth, we don't take care of it, we, in effect, aren't taking care of ourselves. In addition to that, the joy of love, which is another one of the joy of the gospel. Joy of the gospel. Joy of the gospel. Well, joy of love, joy of the gospel, same thing. But the joy of the gospel. And it's a reminder of what the gospel truly is, not what we want it to be. And he gets us back to those teachings, those understandings. Now, Pope Francis was very controversial because of it, I think, partly because there was a sense of that we were getting away from a more traditional viewpoint, which for a number of Catholics is that sacred mystery that gravitates them more to the church. And along with that, also the question of different social justice questions come to mind, like for our LGBTQ brothers and sisters. What about women who have had abortions? Even something as simple as receiving communion if you are divorced. These are some of the questions that he had to tackle. In addition to that, he also had to deal with the question of what are we going to do with all of these women that really want to serve, but there are not necessarily limitations, but there are spaces where they can be in and spaces where they can't. So what we had under Pope Francis was synodality?
Synodality.
Yeah, synodality. And we grappled with those questions. Now, there are some things like women being in the diaconate at this point is a hard no. But there are other things that from those discussions, some of the roles did open up for women.
Yeah, and for those who don't understand what synodality is, it's basically a gathering of people, in particular lay people of the Catholic Church. And what bishops typically do is they want to ask, what the local churches, need in regards to moving the church forward into the 21st century. And so this synodality takes place where a lot of input from the lay perspective comes in, because the thing is that when we talk about the church, while we have the magisterium, which is the Pope and the College of Cardinals, who teach us the doctrine.
Right.
We also have the issue of how the church is run and what things that the church probably needs to do in order to move forward culturally, to the next century or the next millennium, depending on how long the church is going to be here. But as the people of the church moves, and as the world moves, so the church has to move. And so the synodality helps the church from a perspective from the ground level, because it typically asks the people, like, what do we need to move this church forward? there have been a lot of things that have come into play in regards to, like you were mentioning, about women in the diaconate,
Right.
which still is not largely accepted amongst, the College of Cardinals and most bishops. But I think the thing is that it's not a question of, it's not out of the question. I think the problem is that, maybe there's just too many people in the hierarchy who's not ready for that yet. And how do we lay that out? I would probably say that hopefully in my lifetime, I will see women deacons in the church. It'll probably come before they let women become priests. But I don't think that's going to happen in my lifetime.
It won't. It will not happen. Women will not become
Yes.
priests. That's and there's also, along with that, there's also an understanding of the roles that we play in order for the church to move forward. So, the roles that clergy play, that the ordained play, versus the role that the laity plays. And it's not a question, at least in my mind, it shouldn't be a question of us against them. It should be more of a question of all of us working together to move forth the mission of Christ. And how do we do that? How do we use the gifts that each of us have been given by God to help move forward, to push this mission that Jesus has given us? So when it comes to women in the diaconate, from our readings, especially in the New Testament, we do see that with Phoebe. However, there is a question of what exactly did that mean back then versus what it could mean now. The question of women priests, that I think is pretty much a closed door, primarily because when, according to the Gospels, when Jesus called the 12, he called 12 men. So he called the others too, but specifically those 12 men are sort of the start of this, of the priesthood as far as the ordained goes.
Yeah. And a lot of this synodality happened late last year in 2024, and there are some that the policies that they took towards those synodalities is starting to happen. Like there's been important positions in the Vatican that's been appointed to women. So some of that stuff is being implemented. We're starting to see more churches administratively being led by lay people.
Right.
And I think that's a trend that's been happening, for the last couple of years due to the priest shortage that is happening, in particular in our country, in the United States.
Right.
But we are starting to see a trend of lay people, lay ministers, administratively leading churches, and in particular women.
Right.
There are women who are running Catholic churches across the country. Because of the fact that there are no priests, or there are not enough priests to run it. But with that being said, the new Pope,
Yes.
formerly Cardinal Robert Prevost,
Yes.
who is now Pope Leo XIV, was elected in early May by the College of Cardinals, and generally he is an extension of Pope Francis.
Right.
Because of the fact that Pope Francis just recently in the last 2 years had elected him to be the cardinal. He was originally the cardinal in, what was that country he was in?
He was in Peru.
Peru, yes. So with that being said, Pope Leo, who is kind of like a mentee of Pope Francis, continues the the policies of Pope Francis, trying to move forward a lot of issues that Pope Francis couldn't finish because he got sick and he passed away. He promises to extend those policies within the church of still being a church for the people, still being a church that advocates for the poor. We've seen Pope Leo talk about the issues of the church and still trying to move forward Pope Francis's way of being church. And we also even see Pope Leo have criticisms of certain things that is happening in this country in regards to immigration, in regards to how this current administration is handling things, and we'll talk about that in 1 second because that's an important topic of 2025. But we see Pope Leo continuing the legacy of Pope Francis. What do you?
And I thought it was really interesting that Pope Leo, formerly Cardinal Robert Prevost, was elected during this particular point in time in our nation's history, because in some sense, they found the least U.S. of the cardinals that were originally from the U.S., the least in terms of his style and the way he moves about, as an Augustinian anyway, the least of all of the different U.S. popes or U.S. bishops. And I thought that was a very interesting choice, but I think that it was actually a pretty smart choice, given that as an American born, there is no question about language. So if it's something that he needs to say directly to the American church, he can say it and it will be clear. Yeah, he might have a slight Midwest Chicago accent, but I think we can get past that. But I think that that's very important. And the other thing is that he can call for the Church of America the Catholic Church of America, to go back and readdress some of the things that was kind of getting us into trouble with the question of identity politics, and how identity politics was creeping into our church to the detriment of a number of people, sadly. Mostly our immigrant brothers and sisters. So I thought that it was a pretty good way, a good response to kind of what we're dealing with in this country right now with the current administration and the cruelties that are going through.
Yeah, and it's a plus that Pope Leo is a Chicagoland bishop. He's from the Chicagoland area, particularly from Dalton, Illinois. And as we also hear about Dalton in the news, not a lot is good been said about Dalton before. There was a discovery that Pope Leo's family, and him grew up in Dalton. Because, another thing too is that Tiffany Haynyard, who was the former mayor of Dalton, which is something that happened earlier this year with the election of Jason House now, who is the mayor of Dalton currently. And they also have used this home as a historical site. Because his home that he grew up in Dalton is still up, and it is now preserved by the city of Dalton, as a historical site.
Yep.
Not sure what they're doing with it outside of just putting signs and stuff, but it's a historical site. But the thing about Pope Leo too is, like I said, his criticisms of certain policies that the United States implements and supports, not just nationally but also globally, because just like his predecessor, Pope Francis, he also had criticisms of how the situation in Gaza is being handled.
Yeah.
The genocide that's been happening there. But a lot of criticism from to Pope Francis is from certain bishops here that support the current administration, and it is another topic that we probably might want to talk about, because in 2025 we have this new, well, I wouldn't say new administration, but returning administration with a vengeance.
Bigger, badder, worse. But one final note about Pope Leo that is kind of near and dear to my heart. In addition to being from the Chicagoland area, he is an alum of the same seminary that Gardis and I went to, which is Catholic Theological Union.
Yes, indeed.
And bonus, we share a birthday, September 14th. So,
alrighty. Yes. Pope Leo is an alum of CTU. Shout out to CTU.
Yes, absolutely. So I am definitely looking forward to what his pontificate will bring us, and how it will bring us closer to God and serving God and God's people. So I'm definitely looking forward to that, and I'm hoping that one day he will return to the Chicagoland area, to say Mass. Even say Mass here at Our Lady of Africa, but who knows? Just put it out there.
Yes. But the return of President Donald Trump has brought in a lot of controversies, a lot of things that he didn't even do in his first administration, and a lot of things that many people in this country, and even some of his supporters, would kind of question, like, okay, why are we doing this? Initially, he gets inaugurated as all presidents do, towards the end of January. He was officially elected in November, and so one of the first controversial things that he did was the tariffs, or attempting the tariffs.
That wasn't the first.
Okay.
That was absolutely not the first. The first thing that was controversial was pardoning all of the January 6th
Yes.
Participants who were subsequently arrested and convicted, and some were actually in the middle of serving their time. That was probably one of the biggest things, although he did say that he would do that as part of one of his campaign promises. The second thing I would say was actually the question with immigration reform. Tariffs is probably a close third.
Okay, yeah, I can get with that.
But the immigration reform, because that's what prompted a lot of bishops who were supportive of his more conservative viewpoints, especially when it came to identity politics, that caused a lot of them to take a quick pause, because they quickly noted that this was kind of an antithesis of what we are as a church. So you start to see some of the pushback at that point, and a question of while countries do have the right to secure their borders, what does that security mean? What does that security look like? Does it mean that you kick out anybody that you suspect might be possibly an immigrant that you think might not have arrived here in the way that you wanted them to? Or was it the getting the criminals that you say existed? So that was one of the big pushbacks that you started to see even within those who are more conservative brothers and sisters within the church. And then, of course, the third thing was the tariffs, because he loves tariffs. And what folks quickly found out was, with the tariffs and the constantly going back and forth with tariffs, is that it caused instability. And this instability forced a lot of stores and what have you to actually try to get as much stock early before the tariffs kicked in. It also caused costs to shoot up. And one unintentional consequences, or intentional depending on who you speak to, was to our farmers. Because with the tariffs, they lost the countries that they were selling their goods to. So, oh, and then of course we can't forget about Doge.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that happened at the first part, but then the guy who was running Doge fell out with, his buddy, or as one historian called him, the first buddy. Yeah.
Well, the first buddy managed to cause a lot of havoc and chaos in that short period of time that he was, that they created Doge. And one of the biggest things that they did successfully, depending on how you look at it, is they did in fact shrink the federal government. At some estimates, 300,000 people lost their jobs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At least, because of shrinking the government. And because they did it so haphazardly, you found that they had to go back and hire some folks because they realized, oh, they were the experts. And you do kind of need experts to sit up there and run your nuclear sites. One of the other things that the slashing of the federal government did was, and one of the more controversial ones was USAID. Mm-hmm. And could you explain a little bit what USAID was?
Well, USAID is a federal department that typically handles foreign aid to other countries.
Right.
Now, I have my opinions on that as well, in regards to USAID's involvement in certain coups that has happened in certain countries, but I won't get into that right now. But I think with that, with Trump's foreign policies, with the local policies and of immigration and January 6th releasing, overall, what we're seeing here is a return of overt white nationalism. Now, mind you, white nationalism and racism, has always been here. Yeah. But this administration has now made it cool to be a white nationalist again. And I'm just saying, it's that's what I'm saying. It's overt white. It's the return of overt white nationalism. So overt white nationalism right now is the thing. when you talk about this administration's work of January 6th. And mind you, January 6th to me was, and I'm not saying it was good or bad, but it was necessary. Because I think too many people didn't understand how many white nationalists was willing to overturn democracy just to bring back, President Trump for a second term. And I don't think people understand the amount of racism that typically happens. And I think that gave people a picture of how much racism prevails in this country. And I think that right there, with him pardoning all the January 6 criminals, that right there continues the trend of overt white nationalism that we're seeing right now. With the immigration, I don't even think it's about immigrants anymore. It's about basically snatching people's citizenships. Whether they be immigrants or not, because we have also seen legit American citizens being detained by so-called ICE agents, and I say so-called because these are really not ICE agents. These are basically deputized people, people that have been deputized by ICE to do whatever they need to do to snatch anybody who doesn't look white. And just basically detain them and ask for their proof of American citizenship. And this has also affected even legitimate citizens. There have been legitimate American citizens who have been detained by these deputized ICE agents, so-called ICE agents, and being thrown into these facilities that supposedly are supposed to be removing illegal immigrants from the streets, ignoring court orders. They have ignored court orders. They have ignored the courts about certain things. They have ignored due process because nobody's reading these people's Miranda rights, their rights to counsel or anything. They've just been snatching them up and throwing them in these facilities. And shout out to many of the clergy who have gone on to the Broadview facility to protest in it, towards these policies. And that's another, big story that is happening. And it's that, it's kind of like that cross between, church, people who want to live the life of Christ.
Right.
But then also, too, they also understand that politics are also involved. So, shout out to all of those who have gone on to the Broadview facilities to protest, because I think there were many clergy who wanted to bring the Eucharist into the facility, and they were denied that. Right. So there have been a group of people, some of them we know personally, who have gone up there and have protested vehemently against these policies. And just like what this administration is doing, they are basically suppressing that protest. There have been smoke bombs that have been thrown at the protesters, bullets, plastic bullets so far. Some of them said that real bullets have been shot at them. So this is kind of like what has happened in the 60s with the civil rights movement. And it's basically, this is basically not just a question of immigration reform. This is basically going into the part of who is a citizen here and who's not, and overstepping the constitutional bounds of who's a natural citizen, because obviously we also get from President Trump that he wants to determine who's an American citizen or not the Constitution.
Right, right. And I mean, and this has kind of been a continued onslaught of the 14th Amendment. and the 14th Amendment does state who is a citizen. And it's pretty clear, and it was actually even solidified in a Supreme Court case when there was a question of kicking out the Chinese during the 19th century.
Yeah. Chinese Exclusion
Exclusion Act, right? So, so this should be settled law.
Mm-hmm.
But sadly, there is some in this country that want to relitigate that because there's this fear of losing power. And because of this fear of losing power, we are in what I've called a course correction of sorts. And we've seen course corrections in this country happen before. One of the first ones that we saw was after the Civil War and Reconstruction period. That was the first of a course correction, where you had 10 years of former enslaved men, women, and children that were actually thriving, starting businesses, going to school, making a living. And you had a good 10 years after the Civil War. And then you started to see this course correction. And the course correction culminated with Plessy versus Ferguson. So then we went backwards. Once again, we had this rise during the 1960s. And from the 1965 Civil Rights Act up until about now, people have been thriving, not only African Americans, but women, LGBTQ, other immigrant communities. All of those people were able to come in and not only survive, but thrive for the most part in this country. And now we're in the midst of another course correction. So the question becomes, how do we as the people of God deal with it? How do we as the people of God not only look at our own self-worth, but the self-worth of others? One of the things that this current administration is really good at is blaming the other. And through them blaming the other, it causes division. And part of it is that, as my Uncle Johnny would say, it's a trick bag.
Well, you know what? I think one of the things too is that, I wouldn't necessarily call it course correction, more white backlash than anything. And that's what's happening. It's white backlash. When you think about why Trump implements, like say for instance, on a global level, why he's doing this whole tariff thing.
Right.
Because the thing we're seeing is that United States, who many people feel, including myself, feel like it is an imperialist nation. And the thing is that you're starting to see many countries around the world backing off from U.S. support, backing
Right.
off from many other things, and not supporting the U.S. in a lot of things because of the fact that their involvement in certain affairs that deal with genocide, that deal with a certain group of people that doesn't look white, and you start to see U.S. imperialism losing its power, and now you're starting to see also too the world going from a unipolar world where the United States was on top,
Right.
to now a multipolar world where now you have China and you have Russia, who are now the 2 and 3 superpower in the world. And the thing is that this is not settling for U.S. imperialism, which also is white supremacy in my perspective. That now it's not the lone country that basically runs the world. So now what does Donald Trump do? He wants to start to charge these other countries for tariffs, because not only is he blaming the other, as you had said,
Right.
he's now trying to place us as the victims.
Right.
Like all of these countries have been, cheating us of all of these things that are unsubstantiated.
Right.
And actually, you will find more proof that this country has cheated those countries even more than anything. But obviously, it's like, it's basically like the robber blaming the victims, like, why did you make me rob you?
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
but one thing that I will say about this country in particular is that when we look at the founding of this country, even with all of its words, who founded the country?
white men.
Exactly. But actually, we have to put an asterisk on that. White landowners, white male landowners. And everything that they did pretty much was for them. I mean, let's think about it. Women weren't even included in the Constitution, despite the fact that Abigail Adams told her husband John, "Don't forget the ladies." They did. Enslaved weren't even full people. They were 3/5 of a person. And with 3/5 of a person, while the South may have had the population, blacks didn't have the vote. And those who were actually here before Christopher Columbus, they weren't even included at all. And over time, their lands were just stolen from them straight out. Or if it wasn't stolen from them, then they certainly got them drunk on it. With the wines and stuff.
And when you talk about who founded this country, who built the infrastructure and the wealth of this country?
Absolutely.
When you look at the land stolen from the natives that were already here, when we're talking about the enslaved Africans, who basically were enslaved to build the labor that developed the wealth of this country, and when you talk about women, who were the backbone of the families of these white men, and it was basically women, and even black women who were enslaved, taking care of the white babies that the slave masters wanted them to take care of.
Exactly. So everything from that point, with these different inflection points, has been trying to get back to what that original thing was. And what people who are not white male landowners are simply saying is, but you said this, these are the words that you put into your Constitution, and we are expecting you to to live up to those words. Now, if you did not want that, then you should have stated that, but you didn't. So now we're going to hold you to it. And so now the question becomes, how do we hold them to it? And one of the things that I've certainly noticed this year is that after the previous election, despite the fact that mostly Black folk was telling everybody else, you really don't want to sit this one out, and you really don't want to listen to this guy. Folks are coming back and they're realizing that they've been sold, they've been sold snake oil.
Yeah. And you know, the thing too is that, you know, I have this conflict with voting because of the fact that while voting is a tool of political power, it is not the only tool. And I think sometimes we focus too much on the franchise of voting, not focusing on how do we develop our leaders to put them in these positions. Because what do we always dealt with almost every election cycle? Voting of the lesser of two evils. Why do we have to keep voting for the lesser of two evils? Because both of these candidates, no matter what party they're from, are people who are in there, in a lot of cases, from my opinion, as people who are just there to just kind of benefit themselves and their profile. But then when we do get somebody in there who somewhat tries to help the people, this person is demonized as a communist, as somebody who does not represent the American values. Another thing that has happened in 2025 is certain people and certain political figures in particular cities that is trying to do something,
Right.
but then when it comes down to helping out the people and trying to make certain entities like corporations
Right.
pay their fair share, they get this demonization that they're a communist or they're a socialist. Focus the attention on the city of Chicago,
Yeah.
and what Brandon Johnson is doing. He's going through these. For me, it's like Council Wars 2 with Harold Washington, where he's trying to implement this. What do they call it? Corporate tax, where he's trying to get the corporations to pay a head tax. It's basically kind of a variation of what Chicago had years ago. I don't know if you remember, but they had this big box ordinance,
Right.
where if you were a company that employed a certain amount of people, I think it was like maybe 1,000 or 10,000 people.
Yeah, because I want to say that was either under.
That was under Daly.
Daly,
Yeah, that was
yeah.
under Daly. And also too, or if you had a revenue of over $1 million,
Right.
or no, a profit of over $1 million,
Right.
then you were required back then to pay your employees, I think $10 an hour or more.
Right.
Which I think they repealed it like 20 years ago.
Right.
But that was a lot of money back then for certain people. But they had to repeal it because if you remember, there wasn't a lot of Walmarts in the city.
There weren't any Walmarts in the city.
There were no Walmarts in the city. But then when that ordinance was repealed, then generally you start seeing Walmarts being built everywhere because of the fact that the idea of putting more jobs in the community was sort of like something that politicians would use, like we're bringing more jobs. But what are these jobs? What are these jobs paying? Considering the cost of living in Chicago is getting higher and higher. Property taxes are sky high now.
They are.
People are losing homes, not because they're not paying their mortgage,
But because of the taxes.
because of property taxes. These are people who have paid off their houses, but because of the fact that they cannot keep up with the taxes, they're literally losing their homes. And now there's litigation saying that a lot of this is basically unconstitutional, because you can't snatch a home from somebody who's been there for 30 years, paid it off, and now you can take the home away because they can't keep up with the skyrocketing taxes
Right.
that is happening in this particular county. So when you see somebody like Brandon Johnson, and don't get me wrong, there have been a lot of mistakes that Brandon Johnson has made that I can criticize him for. But in this particular instance, I really support him on this. But a lot of people have been backlashing on this, and I feel like this could possibly help Chicago if corporations would help out with this so-called deficit that Chicago has. And then you have the election of Mandani, who feel
Out of New
Zoran
York.
Mandani out of New York, who surprisingly won his election, and people are already labeling him a communist, which for people who don't understand politics, Zamdani and Brandon Johnson, far from communists, if you really want to technically look at it.
Absolutely true, absolutely true. So, I mean, a couple of things. So, one of the things with Brandon Johnson and the tax that he was trying to implement, part of the reason why I think a lot of the aldermen were dead set against it was pretty much fear. So certainly since 2020, a number of businesses have left Chicago. A number of them have. And sadly, because they have left Chicago, the base in terms of jobs, and it's for a number of reasons, that has shrunk. So I think a lot of what they were operating based off of fear and not on the realities that you can't keep going back to individual people to tax them out and to raise, because like the bag tax has gone up from, I think it's like 7 cents to 10 cents now. So you can't keep nickel and diming people. But I think a lot of it is fear. And I agree that Brandon was looking at that, but he understands that we have to do better by the people, and corporations, they're going to move anyway. So I know that we're trying to stay relevant, but you also want to be careful about overtaxing your population. Because sooner or later they're going to pick up and leave too.
Oh, they're already leaving because of the fact that they can't afford it. I just said a few minutes ago, people are losing their homes. They're not finding another place in Chicago. Most of those people who lost their homes are moving out of the city.
Out of the state in some places.
And out of the state in some places. So you're not, the thing too is that this city, despite the fact that corporations, they do play an important role, the most important thing that this city has to worry about is the number of people that is leaving, because now you're losing a lot of your tax base,
right?
When you have a certain amount of people that are leaving, and these are people who have middle level income jobs that pay their taxes. So those people are more important than, say, the corporations that are leaving, because you can always get another corporation, or even focus on small businesses to kind of pick up the tab of the so-called shortfall of the city's deficit. Right,
and I mean, and that has a direct effect on our parishes. Because when people pick up and leave, that's one less family in our parishes. So, I mean, it's something to definitely consider. And as far as Mandani and New York, I am going to be really curious to see how does his legislative agenda play out. Because it could be that could be sort of like a resurgence, a revitalization because New York is facing similar issues like Chicago is, in terms of the unaffordability of the city, as well as some of their businesses are leaving too. So I will be kind of curious to see how his policies are going to kind of curb that, and it could possibly be some of the things that we can certainly adopt here.
Yeah, and let's just say that Chicago's politics is not unique in this country.
No.
I'm pretty sure for those who are watching this outside of Chicago, you're probably saying, well, yeah, it's happening here too.
Right.
So it's not Chicago politics. It is unique in a certain, to a certain degree, but otherwise, to a more greater degree, it's probably not much different than what's going on in whatever major city that you can name in the United States. But what I also want to guide us to, because in regards to politics, we can go on forever about 2025.
Yeah, 2025, to say the least, was a crazy year. I mean, it's hard to believe that it went by so fast, but I don't know about you, but I feel like I aged 10 years in this 1 year.
Yeah, well, it would, we could touch on school shootings didn't stop.
No.
Mass shootings didn't stop.
No.
A lot of stuff that have been, that we have been witnessing forever, still has happened in 2025. But what I wanted to also get into is some of the people we lost in 2025. Yeah. And if you saw our show last month, we did a dedication to two important icons in the Black Catholic community, in regards to Miss V, Miss Veronica Downs Dorsey, and also Sister Jamie Phelps. Miss V was an integral part in New Orleans Black Catholic community, or New Orleans period, because she was such a talented musician in that particular part of the country, but also nationwide and even globally. So we lost her in early November, and then late November we lost Sister Jamie Phelps, who was a scholar, minister, whatever label you want to tag her with. Theologian, who founded the Augustus Tolton Pastoral Program here at Catholic Theological Union. We are graduates, Tina and I, of the program, and it's a program that has helped several lay Black Catholic ministers, and has helped them in their journey to become Black Catholic ministers, effective Black Catholic ministers in this particular setting. So, is there anybody else that we 2025 that we kind of
at the beginning of the year, we also lost Marionette Phelps.
Yes,
Sister Jamie's sister, who was also a Tolton alum.
So we lost some important people in 2025.
Yes.
But before we close, what are some of your outlooks in 2026?
So I think that 2026, so let me say it like this. So 2025 for me was a period of frustration, just what was going on in the country and everything else. So it was a period of frustration. 2026, I think my word for 2026 is going to be focus. And focus for me is that we can't allow the outside noise to distract us from what God is calling us to do. I think that a lot of what was going on in our politics um, was designed to kind of keep us off-centered, off-kilter, because it's just, I mean, it was just like this constant hurricane of craziness from one end to the other, from this angle, from that angle. And it caused a lot of people to almost get whiplash. So I think that as we continue through this hurricane known as Donald Trump, that we kind of have to keep our focus on the center, which is God. And if we keep our focus on the center, which is God, we won't be swept away in the whirlwind. So for me, 2026 is going to be focused, because one of the other things that I noticed about 2025, especially as we're closing it out, is that there are a lot of people who were ride or die Donald Trump. One person that comes to mind is Marjorie Taylor Greene. And she got swept up in the whirlwind, and now she's on her way out. And there's a number of people that are like that, who got swept up in the whirlwind, who forgot what their jobs were supposed to be. And because they got swept up, they're on their way out. So, my word for 2026 is focus.
Yes, and I think too, when we're talking about being followers of Christ, what did Christ preach? Christ was preaching the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
And as disciples of Christ, we are to help usher in that kingdom of God. Now, what does that entail? Well, it entails a lot of things. But one of the things that it does entail, like you said, focus on our perspectives, focus on ourselves, focus on what we value, you know, as people of God.
Right.
Because the thing too is that when we're talking about being Christians, all right, we're talking about love.
Yeah.
Which we're lacking. And I'm not talking about that sentimental love that, you know, you see on the movies and stuff like that. I'm talking about that real powerful love, that God-centered love, that love that is undefeated from my perspective when we're talking about real love. And I think everything we do, I think if we do it in love, then we're bringing forth the kingdom of God.
Absolutely.
We're bringing forth the kingdom of God, and that is something that we really need to focus on. Whether we're fighting for rights of certain people, it has to be centered in love. Unfortunately, when you're talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene and her fallout with Donald Trump, I honestly don't think it is about love, but I may be wrong. Because I don't know her heart like that. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I think a lot of the things that we do within the scope of our lives is centered around love, whether it be personal, whether it be political, whether it be educational. Let's make sure that if we are true followers of Christ, that we center this around bringing forth the kingdom. 2025, to me, gave us a wake-up call. And it's unfortunate because if you were, you know, if you were basically more spiritually and even politically astute, this wake-up call happened years ago. But I think for the common, I wouldn't even say the common person, but somebody who's been sitting on the sidelines all this time because it wasn't affecting me, I think some of those people got hit with, oh wow, it's affecting me now. And so hopefully people would understand that where we're going at in this particular society, it needs to change.
Absolutely.
It needs to change desperately. And so in 2026, let us focus on changing our perspective of what we value as a society. Because I think too many times when we're living on the edge of survival, we forget about those values that really make us good followers of Christ.
Right.
That value of love, loving one another. What was the great commandment? Jesus says, love the Lord your God and then love your neighbor as yourself.
Exactly.
Because the unfortunate thing is we cannot love God
If we don't love our neighbor.
and we don't love our neighbor.
Exactly.
And it doesn't mean, I'm talking about that real powerful love. Love doesn't mean you have to like certain people. As somebody told me, you can feed people with a long spoon.
Right.
But love has to be the motivation
Yeah.
of whatever we do. And it was the motivation of Jesus in his earthly ministry. He loved us so much that he gave up his life for the salvation of the world. How many of us are willing to do that?
Absolutely. And, as we sit among these beautiful Christmas trees at the foot of the cross, we are reminded of the sacrifice that Jesus made for us. And it was a sacrifice. It was something that he absolutely did not have to do. And yet, he followed his Father's will. It can't be about what makes me feel good and what makes me feel right. Because as we see, that whole love of me, it ain't working too well for a lot of us. God didn't make us to be selfish individuals. God made us to love one another. Mm-hmm. And it's a love that hopes for no return, an agape love. That's what God is calling us to be. And my hope and prayer for 2026 is that we become more intentional and more focused on agape love for one another.
Yeah, and the thing about that love, when you're saying just loving yourself, and if it doesn't go past yourself, it's powerless.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong, love does start with ourselves, but it has to go beyond ourselves.
Right.
It definitely has to go beyond ourselves. So if you're not taking that love outside of yourself, then it's powerless. It's literally powerless. So let's do better in 2026 as a people, as a church, as a society. And let us try to bring forth the kingdom. Doesn't mean that we have to be perfect, because Bishop in his we had the vicar bishops here at our church yesterday, and he gave a powerful homily about perfection. Okay. And I remember I was talking to Bishop, and I thought about something that one of my students had said, and it was so powerful. I memorized it, because she said, God doesn't want your perfection, he wants your love.
Exactly.
So let's understand that that love has to go beyond, and we cannot bring the kingdom without that love. So this will be it for our episode. We also, one more important thing that we did not talk about this year is we started this year. We started this podcast this year.
We did.
And we're still here. So shout out to you, Tina, for being consistent.
And shout out to you, Daughters, for being consistent.
Yeah, so we do this every month, and it's not a full calendar year, but we did start in February.
Right.
So, it's something that we hope people gain some sort of valuable information from, or something that we might have said that might have changed your life, or made you think about something, because we do this to reach out to our audience, help build, like I was just saying a few minutes ago, try to build that kingdom of God, and to build that kingdom, towards a more just and equitable society, and a more loving society at that. So we want to thank you for viewing this. If you are viewing this, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, like this video, put a comment in there. Let us know what you think. We also have Facebook, where we disseminate information. We also have social media presence on X, Facebook, and also we have an electronic publication called The Pulse of Black Catholic Chicago. We're actually in February coming up on our 4th year of doing that. We might have something different in 2026. So stay tuned for that. We might have something different. We'll still have the Pulse, but might come a little differently. But we'll see what happens. So, but we have the Pulse of Black Catholic Chicago. So if you can, in the description of this video, if you want to email us to subscribe to it, we'll be happy to put you on the mailing list for every time we do a publication, which we do every month. Yep. So we did it every month consistently for
4 years.
For 4 years now. So any final thoughts before we close out?
I'm going to actually end with something that I listened to another podcast called One Year Daily Audio Bible. So shout out to Brian and Jill. And something that Jill always says, love one another. So my encouragement for you is to love one another. Again, you don't have to like one another, but certainly love one another. That's what makes the world go round.
All right, close us out in prayer.
And may the Lord bless you and keep you. And may his light shine upon you and bring you peace. And may 2026 be your year of peace, prosperity, love, and happiness. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. And see you next year.